The shuttle descended through the thick atmosphere of Theta 9, and Hyun pressed his face against the window. His large compound eyes reflected the orange sky below. This was his first real field mission, and excitement buzzed through his insectoid body like electricity. "Can you believe we're actually going to see an apex ripper?" Jiwon said from across the aisle. The reptilian student flexed his clawed hands with confidence. "I've read every report about them. 12 feet tall, armored hide, bioelectric abilities. They say nothing in the galaxy is more dangerous." Doyun shifted in his specially designed water seat and made a gurgling sound of concern. His translucent skin rippled with nervous patterns. "That's exactly why I'm worried. We're students, not hunters." Hyun turned from the window and clicked his mandibles in what passed for a smile among his people. "That's why we have containment fields and Professor Vextar. He's studied dangerous creatures for 40 years. At the front of the shuttle, Professor Vextar stood on his 6 legs and addressed the class. His fur was gray with age, and his eyes held the wisdom of countless expeditions. "Students, listen carefully. The Apex Ripper is not a creature to take lightly. It has destroyed 3 colonies and killed over 200 trained soldiers. We are only able to study it because of the advanced containment systems at the research station." Jiwon leaned back in his seat and grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. "I still don't understand why it's considered so dangerous. We have plasma weapons now. We have shields. Our technology is far beyond what those colonists had." The professor's ears flattened against his head. "Overconfidence has killed more xenobiologists than any predator ever has. Remember that." Hyun noticed someone sitting alone at the back of the shuttle. Minho, the human exchange student, stared out the window without expression. He was small compared to most of them, with soft skin and no natural weapons. No claws, no armor, no venom. Hyun had never understood why humans were classified as coming from a death world. They looked so fragile. The shuttle touched down on the landing pad with a gentle thud. Through the windows, Hyun could see the research station. It was a massive structure of gray metal and reinforced glass, built like a fortress. Guard towers stood at each corner, and thick walls surrounded the entire complex. "Welcome to Research Station Omega," Professor Vextar announced. "This facility houses over 50 specimens of dangerous fauna from across the galaxy. But the Apex Ripper is the crown jewel of their collection, and the most expensive to contain." They filed out of the shuttle, and Hyun felt the heavy gravity of Theta 9 immediately. It was stronger than what he was used to, and his legs trembled slightly under the extra weight. Jiwon seemed unaffected, his powerful muscles built for such conditions. Doyun's hover platform adjusted automatically to keep him comfortable. Minho walked down the ramp last, carrying his bag like it weighed nothing. Hyun noticed the human didn't seem bothered by the gravity at all. Perhaps Earth had similar conditions. A station director met them at the entrance. She was a Kralix with 4 arms and crystalline skin that reflected the orange sunlight. "Welcome, Professor." "Welcome, students. I'm Director Senna. Please follow me and stay within the marked paths at all times." The inside of the station was cool and sterile. White corridors stretched in every direction, and Hyun could hear the distant sounds of creatures calling from their containment cells. Some were roars, others were screams, and some were sounds he had never heard before. Director Senna led them through security checkpoints and past observation rooms. Through the thick glass, Hyun saw creatures that made his blood run cold. A Vrakan spike beast that could shoot poisoned quills through steel. A morphid strangler that could change its shape to squeeze through any gap. A thermal drake that breathed fire hot enough to melt stone. "And these are all less dangerous than the Apex Ripper?" Doyun asked nervously. "Much less," Director Senna replied. "The Apex Ripper has intelligence, speed, strength, and natural weapons that make all of these creatures look tame by comparison. It also has an electromagnetic sense that lets it detect prey through walls. It can track heartbeats from 100 meters away." Jiwon snorted. "But it's contained, right? Behind force fields and barriers?" "Yes," the director said, but Hyun noticed she didn't sound completely confident. "We have triple redundancy on all systems. Energy shields, reinforced alloy doors, and neural dampeners that keep it calm." They reached a large observation deck that overlooked a massive containment chamber. The room below was easily 50 meters across, with walls scarred by claw marks. In the center of the chamber, surrounded by shimmering force fields, was the Apex Ripper. Hyun's breath caught in his throat. The creature was even more terrifying than the videos had shown. Its body was covered in dark scales that looked like armor plating. Each of its forearms ended in claws as long as Hyun's entire body. Its head was angular and predatory with dozens of eyes that glowed with a dim red light. Electricity occasionally sparked across its body, crackling between the scales. Magnificent, Professor Vextar whispered. Millions of years of evolution created the perfect killing machine. The apex ripper moved slowly around its containment area, testing the barriers with gentle taps of its claws. Each tap made a sound like metal striking metal. The force fields flickered with each contact but held strong. It's always testing the barriers, Director Senna explained, looking for weaknesses. It's incredibly intelligent. We estimate its problem-solving abilities are equivalent to a sentient species. Has it ever tried to escape? Hyun asked. 17 times, the director admitted. But the systems have always held. Jiwon moved closer to the glass. I could take it down with a plasma rifle if I had to. One good shot to the head. Professor Vextar made a disapproving sound. Its skull is dense enough to deflect orbital strikes. Your plasma rifle would barely annoy it. Hyun noticed Minho standing away from the group, studying the creature with calm interest. The human showed no fear, no excitement, just quiet observation. It was strange. Everyone else was either terrified or trying to act brave, but Minho simply watched like he was looking at an interesting puzzle. Tonight, you'll stay in the station's guest quarters, Director Senna said. Tomorrow we'll conduct detailed observations and take measurements. You'll each write reports on the creature's behavior and physiology. As they left the observation deck, alarms suddenly blared through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Hyun's heart started racing. What's happening? Professor Vextar demanded. Director Senna pressed her hand to her communication device, listening intently. Her crystalline face showed something Hyun had never seen in a Kralix before. Pure fear. There's been an accident in the lower levels, she said, her voice shaking. A power surge damaged the secondary containment systems. Multiple cells have been compromised. Which cells? The professor asked. Director Senna looked at them with wide eyes. All of them, including the apex ripper. Somewhere deep in the station, something roared. It was a sound that made every instinct in Hyun's body scream at him to run. The walls themselves seemed to vibrate with the fury of that roar. The hunt had begun. The alarm screamed through every corridor of the research station. Hyun watched as Director Senna's forearms moved frantically across her control pad, trying to restore the containment systems. The screens showed red warnings everywhere. Evacuation protocol initiated, an automated voice announced through the speakers. All personnel proceed to emergency pods. This is not a drill. Professor Vextar grabbed his walking stick and pointed toward the exit. Students, stay together. Move quickly, but don't run. Panic kills more people than predators do. They hurried down the corridor, following the flashing green lights that marked the path to the evacuation area. Hyun's legs moved as fast as they could, but the heavy gravity made everything harder. Behind him, he could hear Doyen's hover platform humming as it struggled to keep up. Where is it? Jiwon asked, looking around nervously. His earlier confidence had disappeared. Where's the apex ripper? The tracking system is down, Director Senna replied, her voice tight with stress. We can't locate any of the escaped specimens. They reached an intersection and the director checked her pad. Left corridor leads to the main evacuation bay. We can reach it in 2 minutes if we hurry. They turned left and ran. The corridor seemed to stretch forever. Emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls. Hyun's compound eyes caught every movement, every flicker of light, and his mind kept turning them into threats. A scream echoed from somewhere behind them. It was cut short, ending in a wet, horrible sound. Don't stop, Professor Vextar commanded, but Hyun could hear the fear in his voice now. Keep moving. They passed through another security door and it sealed behind them with a heavy clunk. Director Senna locked it manually, her hands shaking. That won't stop it for long, she whispered. The apex ripper can tear through reinforced alloy like paper. How far to the evacuation bay? Doyen asked. His usually calm demeanor was gone, replaced by pure terror. 50 meters, the director said. Just around the next corner. They moved forward again, but slower now. Something felt wrong. Hyun couldn't explain it, but his instincts were screaming danger. Even his antennae were trembling, picking up vibrations in the air that shouldn't be there. Minho stopped walking. The human stood completely still, his head tilted slightly to one side like he was listening to something. What is it? Hyun asked. It's close, Minho said simply. How do you know? Jiwon demanded. Before Minho could answer, the wall exploded inward. Metal shrieked and tore, and through the hole came the apex ripper. It was even more terrifying up close. The creature's body filled the entire corridor, its scales gleaming like dark mirrors. Those red eyes fixed on the group, and electricity crackled across its body with a sound like thunder. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of teeth designed to tear through anything. Ji-Wan screamed and pulled out a plasma pistol from his belt. He fired 3 times, and the bright blue bolts hit the creature square in the chest. The apex ripper didn't even flinch. The plasma dissipated harmlessly against its armored hide. "Run!" Director Senna shouted. They scattered. Hyun's legs carried him down a side passage, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst. Behind him, he heard the apex ripper moving, its claws scraping against metal with every step. Another scream. This time it was one of the research staff members who had been trying to reach the evacuation bay. Hyun didn't look back. He couldn't. "This way," Professor Vextar called out. The old professor was surprisingly fast, his 6 legs carrying him down a narrow maintenance corridor. Hyun followed, along with Doyun, Ji-Wan, and Minho. Director Senna brought up the rear, constantly checking her pad. "The main evacuation route is blocked," she said between gasps. "The creature destroyed the pressure doors." "Where can we go?" Hyun asked desperately. "There's a laboratory 3 levels up. It has reinforced doors and its own power supply. We can seal ourselves in and call for help." They found a service elevator and crowded inside. The doors closed just as they heard the apex ripper roaring from somewhere close by. The sound made the elevator shake. The ride up felt like it took hours, though it was probably only 30 seconds. Hyun watched the floor numbers climb while his mind raced. How were they supposed to survive this? If plasma weapons couldn't hurt it, what could? The elevator doors opened, and they rushed out into another corridor. This one was darker, lit only by emergency lights. Storage containers lined the walls, and the air smelled like chemicals. "The lab is at the end of this hall," Director Senna said, pointing. "Once we're inside, we can activate the security systems." They ran. Hyun's legs were burning from the effort, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. Behind them, somewhere in the station, the apex ripper was hunting. He could hear it moving through the walls, tearing through obstacles like they were nothing. The laboratory door appeared ahead, a heavy blast door with multiple locks. Director Senna reached it first and began entering the access code. Her hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries. "Hurry," Ji-Wan pleaded. "Please hurry." The door opened with a hiss of pressurized air. They stumbled inside, and the director immediately began closing it. The heavy door started to swing shut, its mechanisms grinding slowly. That's when they heard it. The sound of claws on metal getting closer, fast. "It knows where we are," Minho said calmly. "How?" Doyen asked. "It can sense our heartbeats," the human replied. "That's what the director said. Electromagnetic sense." The door was halfway closed when the apex ripper appeared at the end of the corridor. It saw them and charged, moving with speed that seemed impossible for something so large. Its 4 arms reached forward, claws extended. "Close faster," Ji-Wan screamed. Director Senna was pressing the emergency close button repeatedly, but the door had a maximum speed. Safety protocols. The apex ripper reached the door just as it sealed shut with a final clunk. Something heavy slammed against it from the outside, making the entire frame shake. Then again. And again. "Will it hold?" Hyun asked. "It's designed to contain chemical explosions," the director said, but she didn't sound certain. "It should hold," the impacts continued. Each one was like a hammer blow that echoed through the lab. Dust fell from the ceiling. The metal of the door began to show stress marks, thin lines spreading from the center. Professor Vextar collapsed into a chair, his breathing labored. Blood stained his fur from a wound Hyun hadn't noticed before. The old professor must have been injured during the initial escape. "Professor!" Hyun rushed to his side. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," Vextar wheezed, but his eyes were unfocused. "Just need to rest. Another impact." This time the door bent inward slightly. The apex ripper's claws appeared through the gap, testing the opening. Ji-Wan backed away, his plasma pistol held in trembling hands. "It's getting in. It's going to get in." Doyen had retreated to the far corner of the lab, his hover platform pressed against the wall. His skin had turned almost completely transparent with fear. Director Senna was frantically working at a computer terminal. "I'm trying to restore the containment systems. If I can activate the neural dampeners remotely, it might calm the creature down." "Might?" Ji-Wan repeated. That's your plan, mate? The gap in the door grew wider. They could see one of the apex ripper's glowing red eyes now, peering through at them. Its mouth appeared next, snapping at the opening, those terrible teeth trying to reach them. Hyun looked around the lab desperately. There had to be something they could use. Weapons, tools, anything. But this was a research facility, not an armory. Just computers, sample containers, and scientific equipment. They were trapped. The most dangerous predator in the known galaxy was tearing through their only protection, and they had no way to fight it. Hyun's eyes fell on Minho. The human was standing near the door, closer than anyone else dared to go. He wasn't shaking, wasn't crying, wasn't even breathing heavily. He just stood there watching the apex ripper work at the door with that same calm interest he had shown at the observation deck. "What are you doing?" Hyun called out. "Get back!" Minho turned to look at him. "It's afraid," the human said quietly. "What?" Jiwon laughed hysterically. "That thing isn't afraid of anything." "Yes, it is," Minho insisted. "That's why it's trying so hard to get to us. It's afraid." Another impact. The door bent further. They had minutes at most. The sound of tearing metal filled the laboratory. The apex ripper's claws scraped and pulled at the door, widening the gap with each attempt. Sparks flew as the reinforced alloy bent under impossible pressure. Hyun watched in horror as one of the creature's arms pushed through the opening. Its claws flexed, searching for something to grab. The arm was thick as a tree trunk, covered in those dark scales that seemed to absorb light. "The door won't hold much longer," Director Senna said. She had given up on the computer terminal. Her forearms hung uselessly at her sides. "I can't restore the containment systems. Too much damage to the network." Jiwon fired his plasma pistol again, aiming for the exposed arm. The bolt struck the scales and bounced off, scorching the wall behind them. The apex ripper didn't even seem to notice. "Stop wasting your shots," Professor Vextar said weakly from his chair. Blood dripped from his wound, pooling on the floor beneath him. "You're just making it angry. Then what do we do?" Jiwon's voice cracked. He looked young suddenly, not like the confident student who had boasted on the shuttle. "We're going to die here. We're all going to die." Doyen made a gurgling sound of despair. His hover platform was pressed so tightly against the corner that it scraped the wall. His transparent skin showed all his internal organs pulsing with fear. The door shrieked as another section tore away. The gap was large enough now that Hyun could see the apex ripper's head. Those red eyes fixed on each of them in turn, calculating, planning. Intelligence gleamed in those eyes. This wasn't a mindless beast. It was a thinking predator, and they were prey. Hyun's mind raced through everything he had learned about the creature. 12 feet tall, armored hide that could deflect orbital strikes, bioelectric abilities, electromagnetic senses that could track heartbeats through walls, strength enough to tear through reinforced metal, speed that made escape impossible. There was no weakness, no vulnerability. Evolution had spent millions of years perfecting this killing machine, removing every flaw. "Maybe we could hide," Hyun suggested desperately. "Find a ventilation shaft or storage locker." "It can sense our heartbeats," Director Senna reminded him. "There's nowhere to hide from that." Another piece of the door came away. The opening was almost large enough for the creature to fit through now. They had minutes left, maybe less. Professor Vextar coughed and more blood appeared on his lips. "Students," he said softly, "I'm sorry. I brought you here. This is my fault." "No," Hyun said, moving closer to his teacher. "You couldn't have known this would happen. I should have been more careful. Should have checked the safety systems myself." The old professor's eyes dimmed. "I've studied dangerous creatures my whole life. And in the end, my overconfidence killed me. Killed all of us." Minho walked closer to the failing door. Everyone else had been backing away, but the human moved forward. His steps were calm, measured. He tilted his head, studying the apex ripper through the gap. "What are you doing?" Hyun called out. "Stay back." "Look at its eyes," Minho said. "Really look." Hyun forced himself to look at the creature's face. Those red eyes glowed with hatred and hunger. What was the human seeing that he couldn't? "I don't understand," Hyun admitted. "It's cornered us," Minho said. "It knows we can't escape. So why is it working so hard to get through the door?" Jiwon made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Because it wants to kill us, obviously." "No," Minho said slowly. "If it just wanted to kill us, it could wait. We have nowhere to go. It could take its time, preserve its energy. But it's desperate to get through." Look at how it's attacking the door. That's not predatory behavior. That's fear. Fear. Director Senna's eyes widened. Why would the most dangerous creature in the galaxy be afraid of us? Minho turned to look at her. Not all of you. Just one of you. The human's words hung in the air for a moment. Then Hyun understood. Ice flooded through his body, but it wasn't from fear of the Apex Ripper anymore. You, Hyun whispered. It's afraid of you. Minho nodded once. I think so. That's insane, Jiwon said. You're human. You don't have claws or armor or venom. You're soft, weak. What could you possibly do to something like that? I don't know, Minho admitted. But my instincts are telling me something. And its instincts are telling it something too. The Apex Ripper roared, and the sound made the entire laboratory shake. It tore at the door with renewed fury, ripping away huge chunks of metal. Its eyes were wild now, frantic. It knows we're talking about it, Director Senna said. It can probably sense the changes in our heartbeats. Our fear levels. Do you want me to handle this? Minho asked calmly. Everyone stared at him. The question was absurd, insane. A soft human against the galaxy's ultimate predator? It would be suicide. But what other choice did they have? Handle it how? Professor Vextar asked weakly. I'm not sure yet, Minho replied honestly. But I think I can make it stop. You'll get killed, Doyen said. You'll get torn apart in seconds. Minho shrugged. Maybe, but we're all going to die anyway if we stay here. At least this way, the rest of you might have a chance to escape while it's focused on me. Hyun felt his heart's breaking. Minho was offering to sacrifice himself for them. For students who had barely spoken to him, who had ignored him and dismissed him as weak. There has to be another way, Hyun said. There isn't, Director Senna replied quietly. The evacuation pods are 3 levels down. Even if we could get there, the Apex Ripper would catch us in the corridors. We're trapped. The door gave way with a final terrible shriek of metal. The Apex Ripper stood in the opening, filling it completely. Its body was covered in electrical sparks dancing between the scales like living lightning. Its mouth opened, showing those rows of terrible teeth. It looked at each of them, deciding who to kill first. I'm going out there, Minho said. No. Hyun grabbed his arm. You'll die. Probably, Minho agreed. But not definitely. And not definitely is better than what we have right now. He pulled free from Hyun's grip and walked toward the door. The Apex Ripper watched him come, its head tilting slightly. Confusion showed in those red eyes. Why was prey approaching? Wait, Professor Vextar called out. Human, what makes you think you can face that thing? Minho paused at the doorway and looked back. For the first time since Hyun had met him, the human smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was something else. Something that made Hyun's instincts scream warnings even though Minho was on their side. Because I'm from Earth, Minho said simply, and Earth doesn't make prey. Then he stepped through the doorway into the corridor. The Apex Ripper backed up a step, its claws scraping the floor. Its mouth closed. The electricity on its body flickered and dimmed. Hyun rushed to the door to watch, unable to believe what he was seeing. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy was retreating from an unarmed human. Minho stood completely still, his arms relaxed at his sides. He didn't make threatening gestures, didn't shout or roar. He just stood there, watching the creature with calm, patient eyes. The Apex Ripper took another step backward, then another. Its red eyes never left Minho's face. Something passed between them, some communication that didn't need words. What's happening? Ji-won whispered. I don't know, Hyun replied. But I think we're about to learn why humans are really classified as coming from a death world. The Apex Ripper's body language changed. Its aggressive posture melted away, replaced by something Hyun never thought he would see in such a creature. Uncertainty, doubt, and underneath it all, something that looked very much like recognition. The creature had seen something in Minho, something that reminded it of the apex predators from its own world, something that told it this small, soft human was more dangerous than anything it had ever faced. Minho took one step forward. The Apex Ripper turned and ran. The corridor stretched before Minho like a tunnel into darkness. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and the air smelled like burnt metal and ozone. The Apex Ripper had retreated about 20 meters down the hallway, its massive body tense and coiled. Minho walked forward slowly. Each step was measured, calm. He kept his breathing steady and his hands loose at his sides. No aggressive postures, No threatening movements. Just patient, inevitable approach. Behind him, at the laboratory door, he could hear the other students watching. Their hearts were racing. He could almost feel their fear radiating like heat, but Minho's own heart beat slow and steady. He had learned long ago that panic made you pray. The apex ripper watched him come. Its red eyes tracked every movement, every shift of weight. The creature's claws flexed against the floor, leaving deep scratches in the metal. Electricity sparked across its scales, a nervous display of power. Minho stopped walking. He stood perfectly still and made eye contact with the creature. Not a challenge. Not a threat. Just acknowledgement. Predator to predator. The apex ripper's head lowered slightly. Its mouth opened, showing those terrible teeth, and a low rumble came from deep in its chest. A warning growl. Stay away, Minho didn't move. Didn't blink. He just stood there and maintained that steady gaze. This was the crucial moment. The instant where everything would be decided. In nature, when two apex predators met, they had to determine which one was truly dominant. Sometimes they fought. Sometimes one submitted. But always there was this moment of assessment. The apex ripper took one step forward, testing. Its claws scraped the floor and more electricity danced across its body. It was trying to intimidate, to make Minho run. Minho tilted his head slightly to the side, still watching, still waiting. His body language said something clear. I'm not running. The creature stopped advancing. Its red eyes narrowed, studying this strange prey that didn't behave like prey at all. Confusion rippled through its posture. This wasn't how the game was supposed to work. From the laboratory, Hyun's voice called out softly. What's he doing? I don't know, Director Senna replied. I've never seen anything like this. Minho heard them but didn't respond. Breaking eye contact now would be a mistake. The apex ripper needed to understand completely. Needed to see what Minho was showing it. He took one slow step forward. The apex ripper flinched. Barely noticeable, just a tiny shift backward. But Minho saw it. The creature saw him see it. And in that moment, something changed. The apex ripper had evolved on a world where it was the ultimate predator. Nothing challenged it. Nothing hunted it. It stood at the very top of its food chain, alone and unchallenged. Its instincts were honed over millions of years to recognize prey and other predators, and right now those instincts were screaming at it that Minho was not prey. Minho took another step. His movements were smooth, unhurried. He wasn't attacking, wasn't running, just advancing with the patience of something that knew, absolutely knew, that time was on its side. This was the secret that other species didn't understand about humans. They looked at human bodies and saw no claws, no armor, no venom, and decided humans were weak. But they missed what made humans truly dangerous. Humans were persistence hunters. On Earth, humans had chased prey for days, weeks even, never stopping, never giving up. They tracked animals across continents. They exhausted creatures far faster and stronger than themselves through pure, relentless endurance. And more than that, humans had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain, not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest, by recognizing patterns, by understanding behavior, by looking into the eyes of other predators and knowing deep down exactly what they were thinking. The apex ripper backed up another step, then another. Its aggressive posture was completely gone now. The electricity on its scales flickered and died. Its eyes darted to the sides, looking for escape routes. It was no longer hunting. It was being hunted. Minho stopped advancing. He had made his point. Now came the second crucial moment. He slowly, deliberately turned his body sideways to the creature, offering it a path to escape, showing it that he wasn't here to kill, just to establish dominance. The apex ripper understood. It took the offered escape, moving sideways along the wall, keeping its eyes on Minho the whole time. Its body was low to the ground now, submissive, afraid. This is impossible, Jiwon whispered from the doorway. It's running from him. Not running, Professor Vextar said weakly. The old professor had managed to drag himself closer to the door to watch. Submitting. There's a difference. The apex ripper reached a side corridor and hesitated. It looked at Minho one last time. In its red eyes, Minho saw confusion, fear, and something else. Recognition, perhaps. An understanding that it had met something it couldn't defeat. Then the creature turned and fled down the side corridor. They heard its claws scraping against metal, growing fainter as it put distance between itself and the human. Within seconds, the sound was gone completely. Silence filled the hallway. Minho let out a slow breath and turned back to the laboratory. The other students stared at him with wide eyes. Fear, wonder, and disbelief mixed on their faces. "Is everyone all right?" Minho asked calmly, as if he had just finished a normal class assignment. "What was that?" Hyun demanded. His legs were shaking. "What did you do?" "I showed it that I wasn't prey," Minho replied simply, "and that I wasn't intimidated by its displays." Director Senna stepped into the corridor, her forearms wrapped around herself protectively. "In 40 years of xenobiology research, I've never seen anything like that. The apex ripper is the most dangerous predator we've ever studied. It's killed trained soldiers, destroyed colonies, and it just ran from an unarmed student." "Not a student," Professor Vexitar said softly. "A human. There's a difference." Minho walked back to the laboratory. As he passed Yuan, the reptilian student actually backed away, pressing himself against the wall. The plasma pistol hung forgotten in his clawed hand. "We should get to the evacuation pods while we can," Minho suggested. "The apex ripper won't come near me again, but there are other creatures loose in the station." "We're not safe yet." "You knew it would run," Hyun said. "How?" Minho paused and looked at his classmate. "I didn't know for certain, but I understood something about it." "About what it is, which is an apex predator from a world where it never met anything like itself," Minho explained. "It evolved without competition, without challenges, so when it encountered something that read as another apex predator, its instincts didn't know what to do." "But you don't have claws or armor," Doyen said. "What made it see you as a predator?" Minho smiled that strange smile again. "Because I am one. So are all humans. We just hunt differently than most species expect." Professor Vextar managed to stand with Hyun's help. Blood still stained his fur, but his eyes were bright with understanding. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. I never really understood what that meant until now." "What does it mean?" Jiwon asked. "It means humans evolved on a planet so dangerous that they had to become apex predators just to survive," the professor replied. "They didn't do it with claws or venom. They did it with intelligence, endurance, and something else. Something that creature recognized." "What?" Hyun asked. Minho answered quietly. "The willingness to never give up, to chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion, to face creatures bigger and stronger and never back down. Humans spent millions of years learning to hunt everything on Earth. Some we ate, some we domesticated, some we drove to extinction." He looked at each of them in turn. The apex ripper sensed that, sensed what humans are, and it decided that fighting me wasn't worth the risk. Director Senna's hands were still shaking. "We need to leave now, while we have the chance." They moved into the corridor, forming a group around Professor Vextar to help him walk. Minho took point, leading them toward the evacuation pods. His calm presence seemed to affect the others, steadying their nerves. As they walked through the damaged station, passing broken doors and scorched walls, Hyun realized something. The other students weren't just following Minho for protection. They were following him because in this moment of crisis they recognized him as their leader. The prey species had accepted the predator's guidance. And somehow that felt right. The rescue ship arrived 6 hours after they reached the evacuation pods. Hyun watched through the small window as the military vessel approached, its weapons systems active and scanning for threats. They had been lucky. The other escaped creatures had scattered throughout the station, but none had approached their position. Minho had stayed awake the entire time, standing guard while the others rested. He never complained about being tired, never asked to be relieved. He just stood there, watching the corridor with patient, alert eyes. When the rescue team arrived, they were a squad of Korthax soldiers, big reptilian warriors with heavy armor and plasma rifles. They swept through the pod bay with military precision, checking every corner. "All students accounted for?" the squad leader asked. "Yes," Director Senna replied, "but Professor Vextar needs immediate medical attention." They loaded the professor onto a stretcher and carried him to the rescue ship. The rest of the students followed, casting nervous glances at the damaged station they were leaving behind. Inside the rescue ship, medical personnel worked on Professor Vextar while the others were checked for injuries. Hyun had a few cuts and bruises, nothing serious. Doyen's hover platform needed repairs. Jiwon sat in silence, staring at his hands. The squad leader approached Minho. "You're the human student, correct?" Yes, Minho replied. We reviewed the security footage. What you did with the Apex Ripper, that was either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both, Minho said with a slight smile. The soldier studied him for a moment. I've fought in 3 wars across 7 planets. I've faced creatures that would give most people nightmares, but I've never seen anything like what you did. That creature should have killed you. It considered it, Minho said, but it decided not to. Because it was afraid of you, the soldier said. It wasn't a question. I need to report this to my commanders. The implications are significant. After the soldier left, Hyun moved to sit next to Minho. His legs still trembled occasionally, aftershocks from the fear and adrenaline. Thank you, Hyun said quietly, for saving us. I didn't know if it would work, Minho admitted. I just understood that doing nothing meant we all died. So I had to try something. But how did you know what to do? We've studied dangerous creatures in class. None of the textbooks mentioned anything about facing them like that. Minho was quiet for a moment. On Earth, there's an old story about humans and wolves. Thousands of years ago, wolves were apex predators that hunted in packs. They were dangerous, deadly, but humans looked at them and saw something else. Potential. Potential for what? Partnership. Humans didn't kill all the wolves. They domesticated some of them, turned them into dogs. Now dogs are everywhere on Earth, living with humans, working with humans. We took one of our greatest competitors and made them our closest companions. Hyun's antennae trembled. That's what you were showing the Apex Ripper? That humans could domesticate it? No, Minho said. I was showing it that humans are the kind of species that looks at an apex predator and thinks, I can work with that. Or worse, I can hunt that. The Apex Ripper understood what that meant. It understood that humans are patient, intelligent, and absolutely relentless. The rescue ship began its journey back to the Galactic Institute. In the medical bay, Professor Vexitar stabilized. The doctors said he would recover fully. When they arrived at the Institute 3 days later, news of what happened had already spread. Students and faculty lined the docking bay, waiting to see the survivors. Hyun noticed something in their faces. They looked at him and the other students with sympathy, but when they looked at Minho, their expressions changed to something else. Respect, and a hint of fear. Over the next few weeks, life returned to normal. Classes resumed. Reports were written about the incident. An investigation was launched into the station's safety protocols. But everything felt different now. Hyun threw himself into research. He couldn't stop thinking about what Minho had done, about what it meant. He spent hours in the library, accessing files on Earth and humanity. What he found terrified him. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile planets in the known galaxy. The list of dangers was staggering. Extreme temperature variations, violent weather systems, tectonic instability that caused earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, and the life forms. Oh, the life forms. Hyun read about creatures called tigers that could bite through bone, crocodiles that hadn't needed to evolve for millions of years because they were already perfect killing machines, bears that weighed over half a ton and could run faster than most sentient species, snakes with venom that could kill in minutes, sharks that had been apex predators for 400 million years, and humans had survived alongside all of them, competed with them, hunted them, in some cases driven them to extinction. But it wasn't just the predators. Even Earth's herbivores were deadly. Elephants that could crush vehicles, hippopotamuses that killed more humans than any other large animal in Africa, buffalo with horns that could gore through flesh like paper. Earth didn't make prey animals, it made survivors. Everything that lived there had to be tough, adaptable, and dangerous. And humans had climbed to the top of that nightmare world through intelligence and persistence. Hyun found information about human hunting strategies. They called it persistence hunting. Humans would track an animal for hours, sometimes days, never stopping, never giving up. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would walk up and kill it. No other species in the galaxy hunted like that. It was too patient, too relentless, too cruel in a way. He found historical records of human expansion on Earth, how they had spread to every continent, adapting to deserts, tundras, rainforests, mountains. How they had domesticated hundreds of species, turning wolves into dogs, wild cattle into cows, fierce birds into chickens, The pattern was clear. When humans encountered something useful, they domesticated it. When they encountered something dangerous, they either killed it or avoided it. When they encountered something that challenged them, they studied it until they understood how to defeat it. They were the ultimate adaptive predators. Professor Vextar called a special meeting of the class once he had recovered. They gathered in a lecture hall, all of them except the 2 research staff members who had died in the initial breach. The professor stood at the front, his fur still showing patches where medical treatments had been applied, but his eyes were bright and alert. "I want to talk about what happened at the station," he began, "not the technical failures or the security breaches. I want to talk about what we learned." He activated a holographic display. It showed Earth rotating slowly in space, blue and green and beautiful. "This is Earth, home to 8 billion humans. It looks peaceful, doesn't it? But this planet has killed more life forms than any war in galactic history. Not through violence, through evolution." The image changed, showing various Earth creatures. A lion stalking prey, a crocodile lurking in water, a pack of wolves hunting. For millions of years, life on Earth has been engaged in an arms race. Predators evolving better hunting strategies, prey evolving better defenses. An endless cycle of death and adaptation, and humans emerged from this crucible not as the strongest or the fastest, but as the smartest. Jiwan raised his hand. "Professor, why didn't we learn this before? Why wasn't it in any of our textbooks?" "Because humans don't like to advertise it," Professor Vextar replied. "They prefer that other species see them as friendly, cooperative, diplomatic. And they are all those things. But underneath that civilization, underneath that culture, they're still predators from a death world, and every so often that shows through." He looked directly at Minho. "What you did at the station wasn't learned behavior. You didn't study that in a class or read it in a book. It was instinct. Millions of years of evolution telling you how to face another predator." Minho nodded slowly. "I didn't think about it. I just did what felt right." "Exactly," the professor said. "And that's what makes humans so uniquely dangerous in the galaxy. They have instincts honed by the most hostile environment imaginable, combined with intelligence that rivals any species. When those 2 things align, the result is formidable." Hyun stood up. "Professor, should we be afraid of humans?" The lecture hall went silent. Everyone waited for the answer. Professor Vexitar considered the question carefully. "No," he said finally. "You should respect them. There's a difference. Humans are not monsters. They're not mindless killers. They built civilizations, created art, explored space peacefully. They want to be part of the galactic community." He paused. "But you should never forget what they are. Never dismiss them because they look soft or unarmed. Never assume they're weak because they lack natural weapons. And never ever corner them. Because if you do, you'll discover what the Apex Ripper discovered. That humans are far more dangerous than they appear." Classes resumed after that. Life continued. But things had changed in subtle ways. When Minho walked through the halls, other students moved aside. Not out of fear exactly, out of respect. They nodded to him. Some even smiled. The human who had faced down the galaxy's most dangerous predator and won. Hyun became friends with Minho. Real friends, not just classmates. They studied together, ate together, talked about everything from quantum physics to ancient history.